LAWsome by ConsultWebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello, LAWsome listeners. Today on our show, we're talking with Gregg Goldfarb, attorney and founder at Gregg M. Goldfarb, LLP. Gregg has been practicing civil litigation and representing hundreds of medical providers, large banks, small businesses, and individuals in their various legal matters for nearly 25 years now. He's helped thousands of clients in complicated litigation receive millions of dollars in compensation for their injuries. Gregg has been advocating for the disabled community for 15 years, serving as past president of the South Florida Center for Independent Living, and he's even started an environmental nonprofit called Clean Miami River. Today's topic, it's a very important one. It's around the evolution of a business, and more importantly, the need to pivot as a law firm owner. So welcome, Gregg. Thank you for joining the LAWsome Show.
All right, thank you for having me on here, Tanner. It's an honor and a privilege.
Absolutely. Well, it's an honor and privilege to speak to you. I know, you've had a long, very successful career practicing law, running your own business. Some may even say achieving the American dream, and how you've worked through this industry and been wildly successful in a lot of different ways. But I'd like for our listeners, let's step back in time a little bit here, Gregg. And if you could, maybe think back to the early days in practicing law and even starting your law firm. Can you share some of those challenges that you ran into?
Well, number one, my main challenge was making money. A lot of lawyers after law school, their sole focus is to get as high paying job as possible. I was not a great law student, and I kind of saw the handwriting on the wall that I was not going to get a premier position, and I was really uncomfortable going to just a smaller operation where I had no real faith that I was going to get proper training. It would be the best move for me. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to do what everybody's telling me not to do, and I'm going to go out on my own, even though I've never been a lawyer for day one. And I just had a good sense that I could manufacture some work. And my father is an attorney, back then was as well, 92 years old. God love him, still practices full time.
That's wonderful.
So he was sort of the same kind of guy. He had his own practice, doing lots of things. I said, hey, Dad, you're going to have to send me some work, connect me to your buddies. And so I was off and running. But the main issue was, trying to make some money.
And how did you, in working through that, looking back naturally, did you ever find, the big topic here is around pivoting. So did you ever find that one area just simply was not profitable or producing revenue and you had to pivot? Any experiences in that respect?
Yeah, so the nonprofit, the Clean Miami River project that I did was designed around, all right, everybody's doing automobile accident cases, workers' comp. And, Miami, South Florida had the Everglades, always been under stress, always getting polluted. So I kind of knew that there was the Clean Water Act provided attorney's fees. So if I could start this nonprofit and maybe get hired by some environmental groups that were trying to clean up the water, that I could make some money. Well, before you knew it, I had 2 trials, big environmental trials, and I got a little bit of money. I got $7,000 for a 5-week trial. But back then I was thrilled, and it was a big trial again in the Florida Keys, and I was basically like the second attorney involved in the case. And the main attorney handled most of the stuff, and I was just basically handling a few of the issues. But after the first case, we won some of the issues, and it was an amazing experience. And I had some big name people testifying in the case, and I was overwhelmed. But I basically learned how to try a case before I learned how to be an attorney. And then lo and behold, I got hired for a second environmental trial, both of them relating to the Everglades, hurricane evacuation, and all that. So it was great stuff. But the second trial, I didn't get paid. And so then at that point, I realized that there was just no chance in me really making a living being an environmental attorney. So I like right out of the gate, I just kind of knew I was going to have to chase the money, where I could make money. And I knew that I had the wherewithal to try a case, without even really knowing how to be a lawyer. So I kind of knew that I could take chances and, be focused and do what I needed to do to represent my clients and, hopefully not mess up the case.
Do you know how many cases you're signing from your marketing investment each month? If you want to diagnose the status of your firm's marketing efforts, then the LAWsome podcast has a gift for you. Discover the best and the most unique legal marketing solutions available today using the Decision Making Handbook's free printable criteria. Claim your copy in the bio below. Well, yeah, it sounds as though, getting the cart before the horse in certain instances can prove successful. I mean, that's one way you can learn by trial by fire, I guess. But
Yeah.
I do appreciate you, speaking to, some of those vulnerabilities. Naturally, sometimes running a business forces us to have to, look ourselves in the mirror and make tough decisions. And in your instance, in pivoting away from that, I'd love to hear from you. How has the industry evolved since, making that pivot back then? Have you found yourself in a constant state of always looking for the next new opportunity?
It's exactly, the situation that I'm faced with right now. And, even back then. So, turning the clock back to that time period where I finished my environmental, career, so to speak. The internet just came about and computers. And so all of a sudden, attorneys were using fax machines. They had the typewriters. So it became an extremely big challenge to try to incorporate all of that. I didn't really have money to hire high-end IT people to set me up and all that. And so I was unplugging the router, plugging it in. And really, it's amazing how now we're 26 years later and we're talking about artificial intelligence and the changes along the way between social media, websites, the stuff that you guys do so well has just sort of evolved equally in the same time frame that I've had my career evolve and bouncing around. And in the last major bounce is occurring right now because in the state of Florida where I practice, they've done tort reform. And so one of my main lines of work has been written out. The sort of other areas where I could have shifted to are also now being either written out or restricted in ways that I think are really unfair to the consumer. Obviously, a lot of me and my colleagues and I are, scampering around what's our next move. So I've always, from the beginning, it's always been in my DNA. I'm going to have to adapt. I was willing to go to the library, get the form books, watch videos, how-to videos and all that, just to learn a new area that, for the moment would survive and pay me. And, I could make a living at it. And so now I'm back to, it's 27 years later and here I am again. And, I've already kind of moved into other areas, mass torts. And I have so much experience doing so many different areas of law over time that, I could go back to some of those or move on in a different way.
Every year we make predictions about legal marketing trends that will affect hundreds of thousands of lawyers across the country. If you've been looking to reach new clients, stay informed, or gain a competitive advantage in your market area, this is your opportunity. Unlock the secrets of success with this exclusive PDF that reveals some of the top legal marketing trends in the industry today. Claim your copy in the bio below. Well, you hit on something earlier, and you've hit on several things that I'd like to spend some time on, but one thing in particular was just your willingness to accept a certain level of risk. And basically almost there's an obligation there that you have to accept a certain level of risk if you want to continue to be successful as a business owner, especially in the legal profession. But so I'd like to spend a little time on that. But before we do, you referenced the tort reform. So some of the legislative changes that have been happening in Florida this year. No doubt about it, this has been a major disruptor for a lot of law firms down in Florida. But it's akin to a lot of other states who have had some significant tort reform over the years. So if you don't mind, Gregg, would you spend just a minute summarizing what has happened down in Florida? How has it impacted businesses, specifically law firm businesses? And let's work into kind of your next steps and looking at addressing risk and chasing the next opportunity.
So the tort reform there's numerous parts to it. I'm still trying to get my hands around it. I'm going to meet with some of the attorneys, some of the, I guess, bigger name personal injury attorneys in Florida, specifically to hear what they say their take is, what they plan on doing, if there's going to be any constitutional challenges. Some parts of the law might have an access to court issue, and that would be really my area of law. So there's really, I'm going to say there's three areas of law that I see right now that have been majorly affected. One is what we call the personal injury protection law. In Florida, all drivers have to have personal injury protection and property damage insurance. Many other states require bodily injury insurance, which means if you cause the accident, you're going to pay for their medical bills and whatever lost wages, pain and suffering, up to whatever insurance you purchased. But in Florida, many years ago, I would say, I'm going to say 53 years ago, the state decided, hey, we have so many small accident cases in court. Why don't let's try to, eliminate those small, fender bender, whiplash kind of cases, which I don't say are small. Whiplash does hurt, and it can cause you a lot of problems over the course of your life. But what happened was the legislators decided to say, okay, you cannot go to court on a small accident unless you can prove that you have a permanent injury. In exchange for that, what we're going to do is going to give you $10,000 of personal injury protection insurance, even if you're at fault. So we're living in a society where there's tons of accidents. So they, I guess they thought the smart thing to do was give everybody $10,000 of medical benefits and lost wages. And they thought they were going to reduce the number of cases in court. Well, just the opposite happened. It created this whole cottage industry, the PIP world, which I'm part of, and basically it exploded. The number of cases that were filed just went beyond what the legislators ever imagined. So now they're kind of going full circle. The reason why the cases went exploded was, all right, so imagine you're an x-ray company, you have a $400 bill, the insurance company denies it. Well, how are you going to hire an attorney? In first-party insurance claims, whether it's property damage, a tree fell in your house, or these kind of PIP cases, what has always been universally accepted is that the insurance companies, the ones that you're going to sue, are well-funded and they are sophisticated, and they, are going to take advantage of the situation and deny claims left and right, unless they know that the consumer has what's called an attorney's fees provision in their favor. So let's say you hire me, a tree fell on your roof, the insurance company denied the claim, you hire me to get your $400 back, I file a lawsuit, I'm going to get paid from the insurance company if I win or I settle for my time. So it could be 10 hours. So, the $400 exposure to the insurance company becomes $10,000, $20,000 if they want to fight. I've had cases that have gone on for, $600 bill. They've been fought for 10 years and I win and I get an enormously large bill relative to what we were suing over. You say to yourself, why would they do that? Well, the insurance companies do things the way they do. I can't explain it. Are they trying to set, a precedent? Hey, we're not going to back down from you. We're going to deny the case. I don't care. You get an attorney. We're going to fight you. And even if we have to pay your attorney $100,000, we're going to continue this model. So that's what they've been doing. So that's the first leg of this transformation. The second leg, the parallel part of it, or not the parallel, but a very close relative of the PIP world is property damage. Like I explained with the tree, same thing. So the attorney's fee provision, they basically changed that. It used to be only the plaintiff's attorney would be able to get the attorney's fees. Even if they lost, the insurance companies would not be able to get attorney's fees from the consumer, right? And so now that's done. And then the third part of it is the personal injury. So like accident cases, slip and fall cases. Number one, they shortened the time frame to file it from 4 years to 2 years. And then they eliminated what we call comparative fault. So in Florida, let's say you're 49% to blame and I'm 51% to blame. If you sue me and you're like, well, I think you're really more to blame than me. And let's just say the jury comes back and says, you were 51% to blame. And even though, I was bad, I was 49% to blame, and I have caused you a lot of harm, you cannot get a recovery. So they turned the clock back. That's the way they used to do it years and years ago. But there was so many examples of people that were really kind of victimized by that structure of the law, that most states went to the comparative fault, where, okay, if you're 2% to blame, you're 2% on the hook. So those are the major changes. And a lot of the attorneys that I've talked to say they're going to proceed. A lot of the personal injury attorneys, they're going to just proceed as is. But the property damage and the PIP attorneys are the ones that we're all getting together, and all of a sudden we're like crying, and we're having gatherings, and we're starting to pray when some of us were agnostic, and the whole thing.
Hiring an outside marketing agency can take your firm's business truly to the next level. But having to compare and contrast different legal vendors out there can be a rather overwhelming and complicated process. So we'd like to help you with that. That's why we've created this free digital vendor checklist. It's going to give you the tools and, more importantly, the confidence needed to truly evaluate and vet the potential vendors out there. It's going to help you understand specifically their legal marketing expertise, team qualifications, what they can and cannot do, types of services they offer, and expectations of those services, proof of success. Have they been there before? Have they helped other similar law firms like yours? And arguably, more importantly, your digital ownership rights related to working with them and what you own or do not own. Claim your free printable checklist in the comments below. I think it's helpful. It's helpful for me. It's helpful for our listeners to get a breakdown on that. But it sounds as though a lot of this, obviously, well outside of your control and the individual business owner's control. Were there signs on the wall, if you will? I mean, did you see this coming, and did the industry expect this?
Yeah, I saw this coming in the personal injury protection, my line of work. I mean, even when I first got into it, which is 15 years ago, before that, I was doing the environmental. I was doing police brutality. Rodney King was big. So I figured, I'm going to be, and then I became a famous police brutality attorney in the state of Florida for a couple of years. But those cases, it was very difficult. The judges were very protective of the police departments. So I saw the handwriting on the wall when I first came in, because they were talking about it back then of getting rid of my law. And then they amended it, and they amended it, and then they basically got rid of it. They kept it, but there's no attorney's fees. So it's tantamount to them getting rid of it.
And that's what I wanted to point out. The reality is that there are certainly some things that come down the line as a business owner that we face that we could have never anticipated, some of those circumstances. But certainly there are others where we may see it. We may see some waves starting to ripple. We may see something in the future that we need to be intentional about and thinking through. And I'd like you to spend a little time there, because I think that's really where contingency plans, risk assessment, and pursuing risk, at least good risk, can be a good thing. Would you take a moment to talk through how you've worked through that? I mean, you're in the moment right now, Gregg, so I applaud you even for taking time to talk through this, but I think that piece right there is where a lot of business owners may freeze. It's difficult to take action in those moments.
As an attorney, the development of your career is probably unlike a lot of other careers. So if you're coming out of law school, you get hired, whoever hires you, that's what you're going to learn. You're going to learn to do what they want you to do, whether it's accident cases, Social Security, workers' comp. And a lot of attorneys, that's what they do. They don't think business. They don't think risk. They don't think about learning other things. One of the phrases that we hear growing up as an attorney is traps for the unwary. You want to make sure that if you're going to take that case that's a little outside of your expertise, when the statute of limitations is, what all these little, hidden rules that you might not be aware of, right? So, a lot of lawyers do not want to face that. They get their malpractice. They say, this is what I'm going to do. Well, all right, now it's 10 years later, and you're tired of that law firm. You're not making any more money than you were 4 or 5 years ago. Now you're thinking, let me go out and get another job. with a better law firm. I've got all this experience. And you realize that nobody wants to hire you. You're almost too old, long in the tooth. They want to hire people right out of law school. So now you're faced with, oh my God, what am I going to do now? So, taking on risk, thinking like a business person are two things that really are not taught to you at law school. It's never really incorporated in your DNA. And it really, these days, the way things are moving so fast, you really have got to think like, what is my next move? Where is the legal industry going? One of the things that was really not around when I started was marketing. So for lawyers, they make a big fee. They are so excited. They wanted to get their 26-foot Commodore their whole life. They take, all the money and they buy the boat and they're like, paying these docking fees. And really what they needed to do was to take that money and either self-train, go to conferences where you're going to learn how to do other exciting things and see what else is out there, or, just basically use that money to market yourself or to market your law firm and get work. The old-fashioned way is out. The going to the Kiwanis Club and going to your church and all that. I mean, some people will tell me I'm wrong, but for the most part, that was the tried and true way of going out and getting work. You're going to go work for this organization and you're going to be Mr. Nice Guy, but really what you're trying to do is get work from them, right? And nowadays with the marketing, there's lots of opportunities. It might not be in what you want to do, but you got to figure out like, how can I, all right, you know what, I think Social Security work might be really good. The population is aging, what have you. How can I do this? All right, I found out I can market and get the work, but now what am I going to do? So there are ways that you can manage the development of your practice. You find other lawyers that are doing that line of work and do work with them, develop a relationship with them, refer the stuff to them, see how they're doing it. Lawyers are going to be, more than willing to take on extra work and even let you participate and help out. And that way you can learn and expand your practice and your career. Keep it alive.
Hey there. Perhaps most don't associate lawyers with the social media platform TikTok, but I would encourage you to think again if that's you. The reason being is TikTok is now the #1 most engaging social media platform on the market. It presents truly a lucrative opportunity for lawyers who know how to use it and use it effectively. If you're interested in leveraging TikTok for your law office, grab the free resource in the comments below. All sound advice there, Greg. You had alluded to technology and the evolution of technology and marketing earlier when you were referencing fax machines and so forth. I'd like to spend a little time on this piece here because I think that's a natural tendency. I mean, you mentioned how the industry obviously is evolving. It is becoming much more tech-based. Operations, management, marketing all have evolved around the tech world. Speak to how you've embraced technology and even if you would, share any challenges or struggles that you've faced in pursuing, staying up to date on the tech side.
Yeah. So one of the things that I did was I hired somebody. I have a large practice, but a lot of my work is referred out or I co-counsel it out. So I have a pretty small staff, 4 people. But one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that I hired people that actually knew technology that could help me solve some of your day-to-day problems that everybody faces with technology. I think that was really very helpful for me, right? You have websites, maybe you want to, run it yourself. Maybe you just don't have that much money to hire like a firm like you guys. Not that you guys charge a lot, but a lot of people just want to kind of streamline certain things, want to be able to like upload, keep their website fresh. So to get somebody that can, do the basics of that, in addition to whatever paperwork and administrative work, I think was very helpful for me. So that I was not always like, oh my God, now who am I going to hire? Now I need to redo the whole thing. Now I'm finding out that the last thing that was done so improperly. So that, was one piece of the puzzle. Me actually spending time learning about the technology And it's a struggle for me because my brain just doesn't really wrap around a lot of the terminology, and I get impatient. But I force myself to really do that. And social media, some people don't want to do it at all. All right. So, are you going to get left behind if your office party was not posted on your Instagram? Well, the employees like that. So, employees these days are not like dying to work for you. They want to get into a work environment whether it's remote working or what have you. So you've got to sort of embrace all these things that the younger generation is basically living through and incorporate it in a way with your law work that works. You could be helping out clients with frequently asked questions. You could be just making your employees feel wanted. To put, somebody's birthday up on your website or your Instagram page, an employee, whatever, can go real far. You just don't even realize things like that, in today's day are really key. Having people that are younger, the younger generation is also very helpful, as well as having people that are older because, they don't want to be left behind. And so you sort of have to balance the new stuff that's coming on with, hey, we can't just leave you've got to provide some training. You got to provide some instruction. Here's how you want to give me a review. That's great. You got to make it simple for them. But these things, there's just so many machinations of how to keep your firm at least at the level that most other firms are technology wise and social media wise.
It's so true. And if I were to summarize this whole conversation, I've heard you reference several aspects in running your business on how you've just been aware. You've been looking with eyes open for the opportunities. You've been looking for the needs. You've been looking at the demographics, at which clients need to be served in this time. And that's it has given you clear direction, which I think is so important. I mean, for most of the business owners out there today, you're busy running a practice. You're busy practicing law. Most of the time, it's difficult to even pick your head up and look in front of you instead of just looking straight down at what's in front of you. And there's so much value in being intentional with that. So I appreciate you sharing those pieces there, Gregg. I'm going to ask you to end with maybe one big thought here. You're obviously in the moment looking at the next pivot for the business and exploring some opportunities, and you've been successful in doing this in the past. But the reality is that there are still a lot of lawyers down in Florida that, as you mentioned, they're still in certain instances drying their eyes right now, figuring out what they're going to do. But there may be other lawyers across the country that have had things outside of their control reshape the future of their business, potentially even jeopardize the future of their business, and they're faced with some difficult decisions right now. So I'd like to ask you, for those that may be struggling with their business and running their practice, what advice would you have for them right now in exploring the idea of pivoting?
So you've got to really educate yourself and to figure out the best and easiest ways to educate yourself. There are a lot of really good conferences that, in the earlier days when I'd go to legal conferences, it would be so boring and I'd get so little out of it. Every program would be the first 20 minutes, the lawyer talking about how great they were, or the speaker introducing with 15 minutes, and it'd be like, who cares? But the conferences now, and we've met through conferences, the conferences now are outstanding. I mean, I go to the marketing, the Mass Tort Made Perfect, they've got marketing, they got the business of law, they got mass torts. So I try to go and I try to meet the vendors. There are lots of very knowledgeable vendors that like sometimes I just all day just going from one vendor to the next, and I'm amazed at how little I know and how much stuff is just moving along. And so you can't get overwhelmed. You got to be strategic about it, but you need to go out there and learn what's there. That's number one. Number two, you got to figure out your financial situation. Get in the boat, the private jet, all these big parties or whatever, throwing a $50,000 party for your office or whatever. Forget about that. Start spending money on your practice and on yourself, whether it's going to a $2,500 conference, which might cost $4,000 because of a flight and the hotel or whatever, that's what you need to do. And then you need to be, my mother always said, you got to spend money to make money. And that's true. And if you're like making a lot of money as an attorney or even in business, and you're just spending it all the time on making yourself happy and feel like you got something to say at a party, hey, I just went to Santorini on a 3-week, whatever, and I spent 150 grand, you're an idiot. You're an idiot, because the world is changing so fast that it's invariable that the old days of you becoming, I'm a Social Security attorney and that's all I'm ever going to do, and I'm just going to work and I don't care about technology or anything else. I know Social Security law and that's it. Those days, I think, are numbered, and they might be already done with or whatever. So that would be my thing. Spend your money wisely, educate yourself, and go for it. Research. I would start with the conferences. I think PILMA's having a big conference coming up soon. There's lots of really good groups out there or whatever. Do Google top 10 lawyer conferences, see what looks the best for you, and really get into it. Don't just show up. Before you get there, prepare. Maybe send out some, you want to meet this person, that person, and really make the most of that effort.
Take massive action. All sound advice there, Gregg. Thank you for that. For our listeners that are interested in reaching out, connecting with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
That's I guess you could go to my website, GreggGoldfarb.com. I'm triple G, so GreggGoldfarb.com. And that's my email, gg@GreggGoldfarb.com as well. But maybe in your show notes, I'll give you a couple of other things. I do a podcast as well. And, I've got my LinkedIn and my YouTube channel and all that. So various ways to find me.
Gregg, thank you again. We appreciate you being willing to spend some time sharing some of this advice with our listeners.
All right. Thanks for having me on. All right. And good luck to everything. And we'll be in touch. All right.
LAWsome by ConsultWebs with Tanner Jones. For show notes, links, and info, go to consultwebs.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Watch for the next LAWsome episode to discover more breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm.